So welcome to my first recording. This one is with Alex Bowman, someone I've known for a while. Alex is a life coach, as you'll find out from watching the recording. I am planning on recording these as audio podcasts as well, as soon as I work out how to do that. On a bit of a journey with learning how to do video editing at the moment as well. So if this isn't the smoothest, forgive me. I'm hoping it will get better over time. Anyway, absolutely loved speaking to Alex. We cover a load of different subjects and a load of different topics, including the benefits of being courageous versus being confident. The main thing I took away from this one was how your ego isn't necessarily the enemy, and it can be helpful, but in fact, how to talk to your ego and how to kind of wrangle it and manage it and use it for good. Anyway, love to know what you all think. Please share your thoughts around what you take away from this video, and I'll be releasing another one in 2 weeks' time. So I've recorded most of the first series now, planning on doing a second series. As I said, I'll be releasing them every 2 weeks, and I hope you like it. Thanks a lot. Alex, hi. Thanks for doing this, mate. Welcome to What Do You Do? Really looking forward to this conversation. The first question I always ask people, hence the name of the podcast, is what do you do?
Oh, well, thanks. It's been a while, Ian, and it's a privilege. It is a privilege for being here. And when we were talking off air earlier, I'm getting the impression that I'm not your inaugural guest. I'm not guest number one.
Well, you're such an in-demand person. It was difficult to get you in as soon as I wanted you. So I thought I have to fill this space in my life somehow.
What a privilege.
He's such a consummate professional. I need to get some practice in before I speak to him.
Oh, mate, appreciate it. So yeah, what do I do? It is a really good question. I guess at its core, I'm a professional coach. So I have a private coaching practice called Clearwater Coaching. And that's open to anyone, but I guess the type of people that I really love working with and attract to my coaching practice are they're generally career-driven parents. So people that they may be stuck in their careers, or they may love their careers, but they feel like they want to be awesome parents as well. So it's kind of like this push and pull that I think society says that you can't have both. You're either all in on your career or you're all in as a great dad or mum. So they're the types of people that I really love working with. And also I love working with leaders, specifically people that are new to leadership, like guys, especially, I guess, having been through this process myself, guys that are transitioning from being really awesome at doing the doing of whatever their job is to then leading a team of people that are doing and letting go of the doing and stepping into that facilitation, that inspiration role. So they're the types of people that, they really light me up and I feel that I can have impact on. So that a professional coach is the heart of what I do, but there are so many more aspects to my working week. So, that's just part of what I do. Another sort of part of that professional coach is that I'm what's called a performance lifestyle coach. So that's where I'm working with Olympic athletes that are on or athletes that are on the world-class program, specifically at the moment within British gymnastics. But I'm part of a team in the UK Sports Institute that oversee all Olympic sports. And the type of role there is, again, it's professional coaching, that executive holistic coaching, where we create that space safe for the athletes. And we look at all areas of their life. We look at the person behind, I guess, that label of performer, because inside elite sport, we have loads of multidisciplinary, and can't say that word, multidiscipline teams, which look after an athlete, right? You have like your physios, your S&Cs, your doctors, your sports psychs. And in essence, a lot of us are like, how do we support them to perform better? Whereas I guess the beauty of the performance lifestyle role is that we step back and we're like, this is all really important. Your elite dreams are important, and what's going on in your relationships, what's going on in your education, what's going on with your financial health, all that sort of side of things. What's that career that you're going to have after sport? Because a big part of sport is the only guaranteed is you're going to flip and retire. That is the only guarantee. There's no guarantees you're going to win a gold medal, and there's no guarantees you're going to retire with the story that you want. It could just be an injury, it could be underperformance, it could be your funding gets cut. So I'm really passionate about holding that space for people, and it links beautifully because it is professional coaching. It's just within inside a team rather than a private practice. So that's again one of the two roles that I do. The third role that I do within the week, which is a slight look back at my, I suppose, my previous careers, is that I'm co-founder of a AI tech startup, which we're looking at going to market very soon. So that's really exciting as well. So that's the professional side of things. And then from the personal side of things, I'm a dad of two lovely young kids, Layla and Jack. I'm a husband. So it's a lot of hats to wear during the week. But man, everything is at the moment just feels really fun. I don't know where I heard it, some podcast, I'm sure, but someone somewhere amazingly said something that was along the lines of, it's got to be a hell yeah, otherwise it's a no, because there's no such thing as a hell maybe. There's no there's no conviction there. So what that does is it allow, from really broad brushstrokes, but it allows me to look at life and go like, is that a hell yeah? Because if not, it's like it's not worth my time at the moment. And so everything that I'm doing that makes something a hell yeah is just being really clear on my values. I'm really clear that fun is really important to me. Freedom and autonomy is really important to me. Adventure in life is really important to me. Being of service and impact is super important to me. And connecting with like-minded people like yourselves is really important to me. So then once you get clear on that, I guess that's sort of those guiding principles, if you like, it's really easy to then go, does that fit within that hell yeah? Because if not, it's probably not worth your time. So yeah, man, that was a long answer, but that's what I do.
Nice. God, there's so much awesome stuff I really want to dig into there. I'm going to dive right in with the first point I've written down because it's the first one I wrote down, which is the idea of identity. And it occurred to me when you were talking about the sports people, because as you said, the only thing that's going to definitely happen for them is they're going to retire. But not only are they going to retire, when most of us think about retirement, we think about us being older at least. Yeah. And then we think about we retire and then we enjoy our retirement. But for a sports person, it's because they're going to retire younger than they've still got a lot of useful work life in them. Not that older people don't, but you know what I mean. They're probably going to need to take on a second career. Let's put it that way. But I also think it ties in with the other coaching that you were talking about with kind of young professional men and this idea of identity, how much of our identity that we tie up with our job role or the as you said, that thing around being an athlete. If I'm not an athlete, if I'm not an Olympian, then what am I?
Yeah. Who am I? What am I? Yeah, absolutely. What's my purpose? That's the really big word, right? That purpose of like, and it's such a grandiose word, purpose, that we can get in our own way. It feels like if we don't get it right, we've messed up life, right? But yeah, like going back to that identity side of things, it's a massive one, that because we do tie up our identity with our career rather than sort of focusing on our identity as the type of person we want to be or become. I've seen it a lot in coaching. So athletes aside at the moment, but like in my personal coaching practice, I've had successful people that have retired quite young, with all the money that they want in the bank that they could possibly think of. And let's be honest, there's only so many rounds of golf you can play, right? Especially in the UK, right? But my point is that it almost feels, you have to be careful. It almost feels like this hollow finish line, right? The whole idea of like this finish line. I'll have made it. Life will be.
Then I'll be happy.
Easy, right? A great one. Yeah, we can unpack that later. But this finish line of then life will really start. And what I've seen happen, which is when people tend to reach out to me, is they've lost their identity and purpose. They've lost their get up and go. And what happens is, I've seen it where really young people, their health just spirals. Like they literally face plant over that finish line, burn out, play a bunch of golf, spend a bit of money, go on a bunch of holidays, and then they're like, "There's got to be more to life." And it's it's really important. Like if you said to me, "What does retirement look like?" Like I have no idea. Like it's about like I love what I'm doing. I guess it's
Yeah,
about scaling back a bit and having a bit
yeah,
more, doing a bit more of some different fun things. But yeah, it's a really interesting one in terms of how people identify with their careers because redundancy is a thing, right? And all of a
yeah,
sudden people then go,
yeah.
who am I? What am I? And then there's also this trap, I feel, which is an area that I really like helping people with, is that I've come so far down this path, I couldn't possibly fill in the blank. I couldn't
Sunk
possibly
cost fallacy.
pivot. I couldn't possibly.
Yeah,
I have kids. I have a wife. I have a mortgage. I couldn't possibly do something different because otherwise that would be wasted time, or
yeah,
I'm too far down that road.
yeah.
I I'm sure some stories will come out later in my story, but I've effectively burnt it all down twice now and started from scratch, and I'm really happy. I'm not saying that everyone do that, but
Mm,
yeah, it is a fallacy. It is a way that we get in our own way for sure.
yeah, definitely. Thank you. Um, the other thing, we're going to go on so many tangents, but it's all good. Um, what you were saying there about the person I want to be or the person I want to become,
Mm,
it suggests a real growth mindset because there are so many people out there who say to themselves, who have this inner monologue that says, well, I am who I am,
true.
and you need to accept me for who I am. Um, where do you draw the distinction and draw the line with being comfortable in your own skin, like be your own person, and try to be a better version of you while not trying to be something you're not or not being something else?
What a question. Okay. Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. So the first, the thing that I love what you said there is about being comfortable in your own skin. That is a massive one. Another way of putting that is authenticity, right?
Yes. Yeah.
We've, I'm sure there's been times in your life where you've been somewhere like in a bar, at a conference, at a networking meeting, whatever it may be, right? And someone walks into the discussion that you're having or comes up and starts talking to you and you're just like, geez, man, like you are so, it's not confident, but there's just like this
Mm,
energy around the way it's just like you're so comfortable with yourself, and one of two things happens, right? um you're either like really inspired by them and you're like, I want some of what they're smoking, like, how do I would really love to be that comfortable.
yeah.
Or what usually happens is our inner critics fire up, our judgment fires up, and we're like, oh, idiot, like, yeah,
Yeah.
who do they think they are, or whatever, right? And that is what I help people strive for, that being comfortable and walking into a room and being, it's okay, like no one in here can take away how I feel about myself, and that doesn't mean that I have to be someone else, but it means I can be out, I can show up like me. As a big part of my life is play. Like it's one of my values, play and fun. I like banter. I like that. Even in coaching, I think coaching is really deep, and there's going to be vulnerable times where there's tears and fear and all this sort of stuff. And if we can also bring banter and play, like who says like personal development shouldn't be fun, right?
Mm, yeah.
um and there's aspects of that, our personalities, that turn people off, which is why it's really important that when you get a coach that you shop around and you find the person that is that fit, that you're like, they've got my back, they're my type of people, I feel I can have a laugh with them. Because otherwise, like, it's we're not the right person for each other. So going back to what you were saying, like the first thing is about breaking down whatever those inner critics are so that we can feel comfortable with who we are at our core right now. Then it's a case of going, and what can I add to this? Not I could be, it's like, and what else? How do I amplify myself further? Like, how do I become even more of the person? What lights me up so that I can bring more of that play, more of my creativity? So that is, again, where we mine for values. We get really clear on those things, like I said earlier, of my ones, and go, okay, so what makes that hell yeah? How do we step outside that comfort zone that little bit more? For example, like I remember a time when I was stepping into a board meeting and I was like, no, I am going to crack jokes. I am going to bring the play. I am going to be okay with that, self-judgment. I never got myself to the point where I bought my board shorts and flip-flops into the board meeting. I think that would have been like perfect authenticity for my level. But yeah, so that's how I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but that's what it means to me. It means being comfortable in your own skin is about breaking down those barriers of self-judgment and practicing that. So walking into places and being comfortable. And it won't be comfortable to start with. There will be lots of imposter syndrome. There'll be lots of self-judgment. And then once we've got comfortable with that, it's like, hey, what else? Like, what is the unicorns and rainbows? Like, what is that version of Al in the future that isn't here now? And not being worried about getting the first little dial on the needle that we can step out of our comfort zone and try and move towards. Because there's a big thing in us that feels like I am who I am. I'm stuck. I'm grumpy. I am this personality trait, whatever. And yes, there's loads of, really broad brushstrokes, but there's loads of things saying, our personality is ingrained by the time we're, before we're 10 or whatever it may be, right? I've done loads of psychometric profiling and stuff like that, and that's kind of what a lot of them say. Look at Myers-Briggs, for example. Not saying it's a bad tool at all, but it puts us in a box, right?
Yeah.
For someone like me, putting me in a box means you're really trapping me. It's meaning you're labeling me, and there's no wiggle room. Whereas when you look at this concept of neuroplasticity, so when you learn a new skill, we get new neural pathways. Eventually, that becomes so like ingrained in us. It gets a nice fatty myelin sheath around it. The neuron fires. We get it, like when you do that deadlift for the first time, or then like, years later, you've got that perfect form. It's exactly the same with behavior. Behavior is neural pathways because it's habitual. Behavior is a habit. So, if we are a worrier or we are an overthinker, it does mean there's hope for us. It's going to be really hard because it means every time we go into analysis paralysis or whatever it may be, it's like, okay, we need some kind of pattern break that then goes, I have a choice. I'm choosing to be the victim here, or I'm choosing to worry, or I don't want to. So the hard thing to do is something else. And it's through that conscious choice of doing something else that starts to forge that new neural pathway. So that other one eventually dies and shrivels, and that becomes the new behavior.
Yeah.
So what's my point? How do we get onto this? I guess it's that you can change your behavior. That person that you want to become is about habit, is about like, intentional action to eventually it becomes a new behavior.
Yeah.
Does that in some way, shape or form answer any of your questions?
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I love the bit around the neuroplasticity. The way I always think about the neuroplasticity is a pathway in a cornfield.
Okay.
So you've got a pathway, and you always go down that pathway, and it's clear. You can see it. It's predictable, and although it might not be the best path,
Yeah.
you've been down there and you know what's at the end of it, so it's
Sure.
predictable. But if you want to take a different path, you have to fight through the new sticks of corn and beat them down and break them down. But the
Yeah.
more you do that, the easier that path becomes. And then eventually the corn will grow across the other path and you won't even see that as an option anymore.
Oh, yeah, really, really nice visualization there. And I'd add to that like when we're thinking about going through that corn when we haven't even started treading that new path, it's like, hey man, there could be adders in there. There could be snakes that are going to bite us. So actually, it's better to stick with the path well trodden, right?
Yeah. But then one of my mantras in life is do the scary thing because that's where the
Right.
growth is.
Sure. Yeah. There's loads of really cool books out there, like the fear is the way, and all that sort of side of things. It's
Ryan Holiday.
yeah. He loves his stoicism. Like that's really interesting thought, and there's a lot of truth in that. That like what do the uncomfortable thing because behind it is what you're looking for essentially.
Yeah. Nice. Um,
So easy to do, right?
yeah, piece of cake. Yeah, it's job security for you at least.
Love it.
So who were you before you became the enlightened person that I see in front of me here today?
I think yeah, there's no short answer to this, is it? It's like, where'd you go? Because it's who was I? What was I in terms of the person, the role? So I guess the best thing to do is like, I suppose, just tell you a backstory of
Yeah.
how I got to where I am now, and I'm sure from that there'll become some tangents and stuff. So stop me if I ramble. But where should we start? 1981. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not sure we've got that much time.
Yeah. So, okay, well, let's just start with the start of my career. So, I came out of university as a sports scientist, and expected the world to be queuing up to employ me as a sports scientist. And what does any sports scientist worth their salt go into? That's right, they go into fitness instruction. Now, not knocking that at all. Like some of the most glorious years of my life working inside gyms, for sure. And the point of this part of the story is that part of that role was being a personal trainer.
Hmm.
And as a really young 20-year-old, headstrong, I was kind of like, hey man, like this is it. Like all I want to do is get into the gym, train dudes that want to be jacked and girls that, want to look great in bikinis or dresses or whatever it may be, right? And I was like, yeah, this is the answer. I found the career. And I got really frustrated because the people that I was attracting were I suppose, middle-aged, like something between late 40s to late 50s, men and women. And they would come along to my session and they wouldn't do much exercise. They would tell me their innermost, like, situations that were going on. And it really frustrated me. Even to the point where, like, I was vulnerable enough to say, hey, look, like, do you think you're spending your money wisely? Because you don't seem to be focusing on these fitness goals that we've agreed. And I feel like I'm not doing a good job. And they were like, oh, you don't understand the job you're doing. Like, the fitness isn't important. And I didn't see it. I thought I was really frustrated because I was like, I just want to see results. In hindsight, looking back, it's that first golden thread of the coach in me,
Yeah.
of being able to provide that, I suppose, safe space for people, be really curious, and allow people to open up really quickly. But I didn't really know that was a skill. It's just something that it's kind of been part of, I suppose, part of my personality. Maybe it's part of my upbringing. So that was the first part of my job. And then got into leadership, so led the gym team, and then led a bunch of gyms, and a bunch of gym teams, and that was really good fun. That first leadership position, nurturing a team, we had some great times. And then one day someone came in and said, hey, do you want me to train your front of house staff, your receptionists and your cleaners to be personal trainers or fitness instructors so that you can have them as a bank of freelancers? And I was like, well, what's the cost? And they're like, well, no, it's government funded. It's an apprenticeship scheme. I was like, hell yeah, if they want to do it, let's do it. That makes sense. And that's where I segued into what a great job that would be, traveling the South Coast, going gym to gym, empowering people to do this great job that I love, which is personal training and fitness instruction. So that's when I first started with a company called Lifetime. They were, that's where we both worked before. Tiny, I assume companies on this podcast. There's no,
Yeah. Throw
yeah,
one off. Absolutely.
great, cool,
Yeah.
no worries. It's all just promotion anyway.
There you go.
Um, so yeah, I think when I first started with Lifetime, I was like, got probably like 10th or 11th regional trainer or assessor back then, and the company was only like 40 strong. It was tiny, all really focused around fitness. And in that time that I was there, I had a great time. And the company, I think when I left in 2012, I think it was like 600 strong. It had just
Yeah.
gone through astronomical growth. You were there when that happened. And with that growth came loads of opportunities, right? Through performance and loyalty and service, got promoted into manager, account manager, various management positions. And that was fine. Just felt like the norm, right? This is what we're supposed to do. You get promoted, so therefore you say yes and you crack on and your paycheck goes up and you have more responsibility, right? So, like I say, it did well. Most of the time was a top performer there. So that felt good. But there was something that was massively out of alignment for me. They got to a point where, with the growth of the company, there was a shift in expectations of the team that I was running. So like KPIs shifted basically, and it didn't sit well with me. I didn't feel like I could authentically tell my team of, at the time, I think it was 30 people, that this is, you're going to have to work towards this, and it's going to be really hard. And I did it, but it just felt so uncomfortable, and I felt, yeah, just really like icky. I can't really explain it. And over that time, like, just felt less and less of the person that I wanted to be. And I spent so much time, rather than nurturing and growing people, performance managing them. The amount of people we had to let go and get the next person in. And that's not me, saying like the company had it wrong or anything like that. It just was an uncomfortable fit for me. So at another time, when the company pivoted with a restructure, there was an opportunity for voluntary redundancy, which I put my hand up for. And they said, well, before you go, have you ever thought about going into a sideways move into the quality team? And I needed a job, so I was like, yeah, let's do that. And actually, again, that really sat from hindsight with like the coaching values, all about empowering people to do their job and do a good job. And it's more about personal qualities and skills than it was about KPIs and numbers. So that sat really well. Like I said, we were in that company till 2012. I met Lucy, my wife, there, and then we just got to this point where we were like, um, had enough. Like, not of lifetime, but just of I guess the corporate world. And we took a really brave step and decided to just pause both our careers at the age of 30, and go traveling. So we had some money in the bank. We put our properties up for rent, and yeah, we traveled the world in 2012, which felt brave, also felt a bit stupid, but we had a fantastic time and came back. I don't know what I was expecting, but I didn't find myself. A lot of people go traveling to find yourself. I didn't get any answers of clarity. There wasn't this moment where I sat in lotus position listening to someone chant by a stream, and all of a sudden it was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a dolphin trainer at SeaWorld. It didn't happen. But what it did come back with was some amazing memories, and this, I suppose, this kind of like clear value of, I want to do something fun. Like, I'm still young. I want to do something fun, fulfilling, exciting. So at the grand old age of 30, it felt like I burnt everything down and started again. I essentially retrained in something completely different. I fell in love with photography and videography whilst on our trip, and thought, I wonder, like, other than being a photographer, is there any way of getting paid for this? So I retrained in London to do digital design, so videography, like cameraman work, also like Photoshop editing, all that sort of side of things. And I took a 60% pay cut from my last job, and started it as a junior digital designer. And I freaking loved it. Had a studio, shooting videos. It was brilliant. And I guess because I loved it so much, within a year, someone saw something in me, and they promoted me to a marketing manager job. So leading a team of people, doing that, and also doing some of it myself, which was a bit more of a respectable paycheck. Because at that time we just got married, we had our first kid on the way, so had a few more responsibilities, and that was great. And I didn't have a clear vision of the future, and then I pivoted again. And it wouldn't be fair to say that pivot was a mistake, because I wouldn't be right here now in this chair doing the role that I'm doing if this hadn't been part of my journey. But what I will say is that it was the lowest point in my career, and actually probably lowest point personally in my life as well. So I basically got tempted back into the apprenticeship industry, working for a much smaller company. I won't say who it was. Um, and the role I got tempted into was really broad. It should have aligned with my values, but it didn't. I felt fast forwarding through all the stuff that happened, but essentially I felt extremely lost. Had to do some really difficult things. I don't mind doing difficult things, but when it's difficult things that impact people personally, it doesn't gel well with me. Long story short, I ended up getting made redundant. And at that point, I had a wife, a mortgage, a kid, and a second kid on the way. So, and I had no severance pay. I was, up shit creek without a paddle. I felt like a failure. And in hindsight, looking back on it, I guess it wasn't so much about just me failing. It was like the whole company was a bit of a weird place with how it just was a really weird place. So long story short, it took me a really long time to professionally and personally lick my wounds after that. I had no confidence. I felt lost. I felt extremely angry. Now, part of that redundancy process, though, was that, or it wasn't the redundancy process, it was the restructure process that ultimately ended up in my redundancy. They hired all of us on the senior leadership team a coach. And I hadn't really, I'd heard of life coaching, but hadn't really heard of what coaching is and what it does. And I don't know if this coach had any formal training, but all I know is the sessions that I had with them, I really, really struggled. And maybe it was because I wasn't ready for coaching, because we're not all ready for it, or the likelihood they probably weren't the best fit for me. Because, like I say, you should choose your coach rather than having a coach put upon you. I basically, in these sessions, I just kept getting asked, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And sometimes that's a really good coaching question to cut through the bullshit. Sorry, are we allowed to swear on this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It really helps us get to the core of what we want, right? And it can be too overwhelming, too broad a topic for people to just go, what do you mean what I want? Like where I was right now, I'm just trying to keep a job, pay a mortgage, and cover, and feed the kids. Like I'm trying to survive. That's what I want. So asking me what I want, it's that. It's not unicorns and rainbows and all this sort of stuff. So what's my point of that? When the dust settled after redundancy, I had a real fire in my belly. Like I say, I was pretty angry, but I also had this fire in my belly about the fact that I wanted to be that person on the other side of the table. No, actually, scrap that. Not the other side of the table. I wanted to be that person sat shoulder to shoulder, empowering that person at their hardest and darkest times. Um, and this may sound egotistical, but I really believed that I could do a much better job than the experience that I had of coaching. So I had that real pull. I was like, I want to be that person. So because I felt pulled towards that profession, I had a lot of time on my hands. I investigated, the top coaching schools I could find. They were really expensive, but I enrolled in one. And considering I didn't have any money coming in, like that was a real big like roll of the dice for me. Um, and at the very least, how I figured it was that I didn't have like this illusion of wanting to be a self-employed coach. I just knew that that role of that skill of coaching would serve me in any area of my life, whether that be professionally, any role. If you have a coaching skill in you, that's going to be huge. And also personally, helping others, in your personal life. So I wanted to serve essentially. So I committed to coaching schools. It was long weekends in London. It's like about 130 hours face-to-face coach training. It was really rigorous. And then let alone the 500 paid hours you have to clock before you can even be invited for your professional coaching exam. It's a huge amount of training. So whilst I was doing that, I obviously needed to keep the lights on. So I saw a job come up as a curriculum manager job in Bristol. And so I went along, sat in the interview room, and two people walked in. You'll know these names: Heather Frankham, David Foster. And I was like, what the heck are you doing here? So these are the people that were the C-suite execs and owners of the previous training company, Lifetime, we're talking about. And turns out that they'd, part of their their vision was to create a separate platform that helps people through apprenticeships. Um, so essentially got hired on the spot. We negotiated rather than a full 5 days a week. I wanted to do 4 days because my kids were at nursery, and I really wanted to spend one day a week with them. Before they went to school, with the idea that once they did go to school, I've got a day back, not to do more work, but to create this side hustle, this coaching
Yes.
hustle, right? So I worked for this company, Bud, for 4 years through the pandemic. Loved my time there. And then Ian, I did it again. I burnt it all down. I pivoted. I stepped out of a well-paid job, backed myself, and yeah, in 2022, went self-employed, and started. Well, Clearwater's coaching was a side hustle. I certainly didn't transition into like a full roster of coaching clients, far from it. But just had this like, yeah, I had to do it, and that's where I am now.
Nice. So, what was it that, if you do feel like you're over those feelings of resentment and anger, probably some grief and stuff as well, right? From when the previous company ended and you were made redundant, what was it that helped you through that process? Do you think it's what you'd learned on the coaching course, or do you think it was something else?
So what helped me through the process of like getting my next job, or
Just no, just mentally, emotionally, personally overcoming those feelings, because that can be toxic if you let that fester.
yeah. I suppose that, yeah, absolutely. So, big part of that is obviously having vulnerable, I call it vulnerable conversations. Some people call it courageous conversations, with my wife. Big
Hmm.
part of, I think we take for granted, right? It's a bit of a tangent, but I think we take for granted that we tell our most loved person in our life everything. But I think as guys, there's always this auto response of like, I won't give everything away because I don't want to appear weak in their eyes, right?
Yeah,
They married us for a reason, right?
yeah. Or I don't want to burden them with everything too
Right,
much.
right. Or appear that I
Yeah,
can't control this, or whatever it
but
may be, right?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, something that coaching has taught me is vulnerable, being vulnerable. So like being vulnerable is like letting it all out, um, without anyone's need to have to do anything or judge it, but being able to play the victim or be able to say, hey, look, what you just said has landed like this on me, and you may not have meant it, but this is what's going on for me. So rather than going, you've made me feel, by putting it that way out there, you can say, this is a me thing, probably. Like, this is how I'm
Yeah.
interpreting it. 9 times out of 10, it's like, you're crazy. Like, I did not mean it to land that way, but it's like, cool. But now we know that I'm feeling uncomfortable and we can do something about it, right? Um, and going back to your other thing, your question, sorry, about what else helped me, other than having a fantastic wife and being brave enough to vulnerably communicate. The great thing about coaching school is that, yes, you get trained to be a coach by having coaching conversations, but also you have to be a client. There's 30 of us being trained at the same time. 15 of us at any given time have to bring real shit to the table
Yeah.
to allow people to learn this proper skill of
Mm.
coaching. So in that time, there was a lot of things to unpack about, why am I feeling angry? Why do I
Mm.
feel like a failure? All this side of things. So it was self-serving in that moment of, one, it's pulling me towards something I feel called to do in terms of like a career, I guess, or a skill set. But two, it's also giving me the opportunity to have a lot of coaching and not shy away from some really difficult crap that's going on at the moment.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anyone else who helped you along the way, would you say?
Yeah. Yeah. There was. So like, other than Lucy, um, there was, I remember really clearly. So that my manager at the time at Bud, right? So this wasn't at the time when I was at my lowest, sort of like helping me through that situation, but the transition into where I am now, right? That transition, stepping away from probably my best salary to
Mm.
like going, crap, this is a scary time. was my manager at the time at Bud. So Brad T, if you're listening, this one's for you. But essentially, I remember going to him and going like, "Hey, um, I'd really like to go from 4 days a week to 3 days a week because I want to start ramping up my coaching practice." And I remember Brad, and it was like, "Don't take this personally, Al." And I was like, "Oh God, here we go." And he said, "But why don't you just leave?" And I was like, what? Like thinking, like ego dense, like, whoa, am I not having an impact here or whatever? And he was like, I'll give you whatever you want. Like, yes, we can negotiate going down to 3 days, 2 days, like whatever. But he's like, I can see that you've got this hunger. I can see that you're getting in your own way. I can see that you'll smash it if you devoted your time to it. So why don't you just leave? Now, that really, he probably had no idea, but it really rocked me, because it's kind of like, wow, like someone's got this like external belief in me. They can see the bigger picture. And whether it's sort of like that serendipitous moment, but not fortunately, but we had a family member pass away at that time, and so a small amount of inheritance came in, and there was this, okay, so I could leave. We do have some money to support whilst I'm growing the business. So then there was that sort of courageous conversation with Lucy of like, is it like, do we agree that there's an amount that we can essentially be prepared to write off um, with me trying, to become a successful self-employed coach? And if we get to that point, it's like, right, you're giving it a go, get a real job, right? So yeah, no, that was a real catalyst of like, I can do this because the risk has been made slightly less because I have not a nest egg, but I have an amount of money where we've set aside to essentially write off, which doesn't feel comfortable, right? As a guy wanting to provide, the last thing we want to do is, especially like you then, if it's an inheritance, like, oh my gosh, am I wasting someone's money? All of this, it's really loaded.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lucy and Brad definitely like the real sort of catalysts in that story for sure.
Nice. And what was for you, either professionally, psychologically, what was the biggest thing you had to overcome to go, I'm going to do it?
Self-belief,
Mm.
that for sure. Like, I think like I said earlier, we take some things for granted, and we certainly take for granted things that come easy to us, right? So like I say, I've always been pretty good at getting people to a place of feeling comfortable with me quite quickly, and allowing them to open up. Go right back to that PT role that was almost a frustration of getting people to be able to do that and get to the core of what's going on, right? And coaching fits beautifully. It dovetails with that. I don't know what you'd call it, that skill set, that behavior, whatever it may be, right? And I have a real passion for coaching, and it doesn't feel like work. It feels like a real privilege. Like I don't have to play a role. It's like, okay, let's get going. So when you start charging money for this, it's like, hello, imposter syndrome. Because my point is that it's taken me a long time to realize that what I feel comfortable with, this skill or whatever it is of holding a space for people that's natural for me, isn't easy for everyone else. I assume, like I've even seen it like on the coaching course, that people really, really struggle with it. Whereas me, it's like, this is really easy. Give me, now give me some really good questions to ask, or give me a really good topic and let's go. So it's taken me a really long time to realize that that's a skill set. It's taken a lifetime to cultivate. And you chuck the coaching qualifications and all that training on top, and it's really honed into a craft. I was really getting in my own way, that because it felt not easy, but it certainly felt easy to create the space for people, that I shouldn't be able to charge money for this, right? Because it's just me. It's just me showing up and being curious and challenging and stretching people. So yeah, it's definitely taken me a long time to get over myself and get over that imposter syndrome and self-belief. So I'd definitely say that has been my biggest barrier to overcome, because it's really easy for people to look at coaches as gurus or people that have all the answers, and vulnerability is key. I always say to people, hey, look, I am on this roller coaster ride too. Like, I am part of the human condition. I fall off the wagon. I have my own coaches. I will always have a coach. I'll practice what I preach. I'm shoulder to shoulder with you guys. My profession is to ask the right questions, and I'm willing to also put myself in that client seat and go, I'm not the finished article. I struggle with things too, but I want to be of service for people. So does that answer your question? Like,
Yeah,
it's mainly been
absolutely.
self-belief, man, and imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I think there's a idea that pay is compensation.
Okay. Yeah, say a bit
So
more.
you get paid because you'd rather be doing something else. You're being compensated for spending time away from your family. You're
Okay,
being
interesting.
compensated for being stressed. You're being compensated for all of those things. So when you love your job, you don't necessarily see the pay as compensation anymore. So
No.
what is it? What are you being paid for?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting one for sure. Like, I like that, and I'll definitely rob that off you for sure. This thing of like, okay, well, I'm being compensated for stepping away from doing the thing that I really want to do,
Really do.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
When you're doing the thing you're
yeah,
why are you being compensated?
yeah,
But
yeah.
I think
It,
it's then taking that different perspective on it and saying, I'm being rewarded. I'm being
yeah,
rewarded for the time and the effort that I put into this. I'm being rewarded for the skill that I have, the skill that I've honed,
yeah.
and taking that, yeah, different viewpoint on it.
It's a really interesting one, like that relationship with money, especially when you're self-employed, and I suppose especially when it's in such a hard to quantify return on investment
Mm.
industry. Like, I remember, it's a bit of a random story, but I remember when I was doing my digital design training, right? I was on the part of the course that was the Photoshop course, and I was loving it. And during a coffee break, the tutor came over to me and he said, "Hey, you look like you've got like quite an eye for this." He goes, "Can I just like test you on something?" It's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, look, here's my computer. Got this picture of a CEO." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, let's say he wanted his teeth whitened. What would you do? And I was like, "Oh, I'd do this, I'd do this, do this. Job done." He's like, "Oh, very good." He's like, "And what if he wanted to look like he'd lost a few pounds? What would you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I'd do this, this, and this." And he goes, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'd do." And he goes, "You just made me £350." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "You've just made me £350." He goes, "I got that, and our previous coffee break, an email dropped in. It said, 'This is really urgent. I'll pay you whatever it needs to be. I need this done by this afternoon.'" And so I said, "Well, look, if you want me to do it, I'm going to have to do it in my lunch break. I'm teaching the course. It'll be £350." And that threw me into a world of angst, because I was like, that has taken me less than 10 minutes to do, and I've only just learned this skill.
Mm.
And it was like, right, but how much does it cost you to come on this course and sit with me and learn these skills? And I was like, well, it's cost me thousands. And he's like, and how much of your time are you going to will you have invested in these courses by the end of it? And I was like, yeah, hours, days, weeks. He's like, right. He goes, people aren't paying you for the time that
Yeah.
it takes. People are paying for that outcome. And it's really easy in coaching. Like, say, for example, like, my standard approach is that I want people to commit to 8 sessions with me. I won't take people for 1 hour ad hoc sessions. It's micro action over time so that we can see how far we've come over those 8 sessions. You give people your price, and no one's ever said anything. But internally, I used to be like, right, well, you divide the cost of that coaching contract by 8. That's how much you're getting an hour. And
Mm.
it's not. All of the insights and the actions come from in between your sessions, those WhatsApp voicemails that you get from people, that constant replying, that it's not just what happens in those sessions, right?
Yeah.
So I don't quite know how we got onto that, but yeah, it's this whole thing about relationship with money and being compensated, and then chucking imposter syndrome. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The other one I've written down here is ego. So ego is, we've gone completely off the bank of the question.
Hey,
We'll
I
get
love
back
it.
there. It's all good. So ego is something that I still struggle with, and I think I always will, right? I think everybody does. But for me, the premise being that ego and confidence, and I've got into Stoicism a lot more recently, and it's a book that you've mentioned actually, which is The Obstacle Is the Way. Ryan Holiday. That's my first step down that path, and I've really got more into Stoicism. And one of the things from Stoicism is that ego is the enemy. When I was younger, I was confident. I enjoyed a bit of success early on, and I think everybody, particularly men in their early 20s, if they're enjoying what they're doing particularly well, that feathers the ego, and then you get some confidence from that. So trying to move away from that place of confidence coming from ego, where versus confidence coming from something else.
Okay.
And I guess the confidence coming from, what is the something else? Is it success? Is it skill? Because all those things feather that bed of ego. So it's balancing. Yeah. Where does that confidence come from if not ego?
Hey, yeah. I hear what you're saying, and it's loads to unpack. I mean, like it's really easy to say like the ego, we shouldn't have an ego, and like the ego is not important, and that side of things. But like the ego comes from fight or flight, right? Back in the day when it was like we didn't have houses, we did have things trying to rip our face off. It was that seconds, that spidey sense of like, is there something there to be scared of? Do I need to confront it, or do I need to run? Right. So it's a safety mechanism. The problem is it's not been that software has not been updated in all those years. So now the ego is like, okay, cool. Well, like, how do I keep Ian safe? And when you look at it from that point of view, how do I keep Ian safe? Although it's bunching a bunch of inner critics in your head in terms of like self-doubt and risk averse. I'm not saying you are, but I'm just playing. But when you look at it like that, it's coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of it's self-preservation, but it's just coming from like a bit of a screwed up place, an outdated concept. So it took me a while to look at ego and go, I'm never going to get rid of it. And actually, it's like that small child that hasn't been educated. It's just like, hey, I don't want you to do that because like the world's going to end. And it's like, okay, so that's where we start having our lines in the sand for our comfort zones, right? It's like, okay, I'm confident in this comfort zone because it's that path well trodden, that in the cornfield, like we talked earlier. Now, confidence and courage are two different things, right? And we get confused by them. A lot of people come to me, they say, I want more confidence doing something different, or whatever it may be. Or now confidence is you do something over and over again, you walk that path down that cornfield because you know what the outcome's going to be, right? So let's take public speaking, or coming on a podcast, or whatever it may be, right? When we first do it, it's like it takes courage, it takes balls to step on that stage, right? And do it and realize that the world's not going to end. And then the more we do it, the more confident we become. And then with confidence, our comfort zone expands.
Yes.
Right? That's what growth is.
Yeah.
So when people say to me, I want more confidence, in our sessions, it's like, oh, actually, like, you can't possibly be confident at something you haven't done. Right? Because you just simply haven't done it. You can be like self-assured and be like, okay, well, I'm going to give it my best, but you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So it's going to take courage. So courage eventually turns into confidence. So courage is, here's my comfort zone, here's where I want it to expand. So I've got to step out courageously, repeatedly, to prove the world's not going to end, to then it becomes in my wheelhouse. So I'm not sure if that answers your question in terms of like the ego side of things, but part of my side of things has been like befriending the ego in terms of it being a well-intentioned inner critic.
I've never thought about it that way, and I really, really like it because just from the things you've said, it feels like you've had to have that conversation, challenge, wrestle with your ego to step away from all of that success multiple times. To step away from, people's egos often based on the car, the house, the job title, the income.
Or the comparison of what our peers are doing at this point in our life.
Yes. Right? Yeah.
And then chuck social media on top of that, then we're all screwed.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the things that's really helped me is don't compare your inside to their outside.
Oh, interesting. Say a bit more. Go on.
So the only person, apart from possibly your other half, but probably not, that really sees everything that's going on in your head, in your brain, in your heart, in your gut, is you.
Sure.
And I'm the only one who knows all of my mess. Let's put it that way. And you're the only one who knows all of your mess. You're never going to show me all of your messy stuff, and I'm never going to show that to you. All I'm going to see of you is the face that you put on, Alex. And don't get me wrong, the more authentic you are, the more courageous you are. I'm not going to use the word confidence, I prefer courageous. The more courageous you are, the more you will be comfortable with showing some of that.
Sure.
But you're still never going to show all of it.
Yeah.
Because, again, probably the ego thing, right? It's trying to keep us safe. It's showing that we completely exposing ourselves makes us more vulnerable than we're comfortable with most of the time, and particularly to the outside world and particularly to strangers.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there because what if we, let me try and get some words out. So it's about what if we're exiled, right? So the ego is going like,
yes,
if we show all our cards, what if people don't like us and we're exiled? Like what will they think of us? That is a big one because back in the day, right, when we were tribe mentality, if you were exiled from the tribe, it meant death.
Yeah.
Right? Unless you're a Spartan, like it did mean certain death. So again, like that outdated principle of like, can't possibly show all my cards because I might get, I'm going to be lonely. I'm going to be, moved away.
That was a really good word.
Yeah, exactly that. So it's a really interesting concept for sure.
Okay, so we've talked about your personal values and morals, and that they do align really well with what you're doing now. Was the coaching journey, as in your journey to becoming a coach, and I know it's not ended, I know it's an ongoing thing, but was part of that process you uncovering your morals and values, or has that always been something you've been quite aware of?
I think we all know what we like, don't we? In terms of like things that light us up like a Christmas tree, or things that like, make us feel like we're switched off from life and checked out. But no, yeah, part of the coaching journey, and again, I guess the beauty of going through coaching school is that you get trained in all of these techniques, shall we say, of they call it fulfillment coaching. So you have two types of coaching, right? You have fulfillment coaching, which is like the unicorns and rainbow stuff. Like, what are we going for? What's lighting up? We build resonance and away we go. We set you off like a firework. And then we have process coaching, which is like, there is something that is impacting this person in the present now. And we need to, I suppose the analogy would be, get that bucket of muddy water, really shake it up and like really feel into everything, because part of, especially as guys, what we do is we block our emotions and they come out randomly somewhere else when a gasket blows. So we shake that up safely in a coaching conversation, so that then eventually like all of the silt settles and you have clarity on the top. So we pull ourselves out of the bucket. So where am I going with this? So part of that fulfillment training is about what they call mining for values. So it's like, how do you get really clear on your values and your sub values, and how do you get really clear on what they are, how they impact you, why they're important, so that then you can then integrate them into your personal and your working life. one of my favorite ways of mining for values. Have you ever heard of like peak experience?
No.
So, so they do it. It's quite a common one. So it's basically like you get someone to think about like their most memorable time or memorable experience where they felt like alive, lit up like a Christmas tree. Everything was great. One of my peak experiences was like summer of 2006, for example. Like I know I was working at Lifetime, but then in the afternoons, I was down the lake wakeboarding. I was teaching wakeboarding. The weekends, it was sunny. We were camping out, it was with friends, pushing my body hard. So just from that peak experience, so that experience that meant something to me, straight away, we can pull out so many little things that pull into my values. So it's like, okay, freedom, I was outdoors, adventure, I was outdoors, I was camping, it was fun, I had connection with friends. So like all of these key words, those are my words. It might be something different for you. So in a coaching session, we go, what is the word? And what is the importance of that? Till eventually we could probably categorize some under some really big high level headings, like for me, fun, adventure, connection, things like that, which really allow us to get clear on what our true north is. I don't know if that answers the question in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. No, absolutely. When you were, I'm going to take you back in time now. When you were working as head of curriculum in Bristol, and you had just started Clearwater, what did your future look like for you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Was it
I'm
clear
still, and
this
I
is what I'm going to
no,
do, or
no,
was it a
no, yeah,
feeling?
yeah, Ian. It was high roller clients, 2 hour work day. It was minted bank account, jack body, Lambo on the drive, chalet in the Alps, beach house in Maui. Yeah, that's what it looked like, bud.
Nice.
No,
So, has it turned out the way you planned?
yeah.
Have you spent the morning polishing your Lamborghini?
No, to be honest, like it's a really good question, and I think it's a really important question for the listeners, right? Because it wasn't clear and it still isn't clear. Um, some people are really good at visualizing the future, right? And visualization is great. People get really clear on the tangibles, and what it's going to look like, and aim for that. And that's awesome. But not many of us are wired that way because it could feel too broad. The way that I've looked at things is I've focused on feelings, so the hell yes and those values, right?
Yeah.
I've also focused on the lifestyle. So I knew there was a certain lifestyle I wanted. So I knew I didn't want to do a 9 to 5. I knew I wanted to be able to like do fun stuff during the day, like whether that was part of self-care, like go for a workout or have freedom over my time, another value of mine. So I focused on lifestyle and also, I guess, wanting to be the person, is it going to make me more of the person I want to be? Like, is it amplifying my personality and all those traits that I feel really comfortable with? So it was all about, again, sort of following those hell yeah. So it's more of a feeling of what I wanted the future to feel like rather than look like. Now, uh, that sounds really easy, but it's hard, man. Like, for example, a little segue story is I remember when I took the jump, and like I said, I didn't have a roster of clients, far from it. I had this money in the bank to support me and time on my hands. And I remember like one of the first weeks, Lucy was leaving for her job, and she's like, "Hey, what are you doing today?" And I was like, well, I'm going to walk the kids to school, and then I'm going to carry on, do a bit more of a walk, and do some reflection, and then I'm going to then I've got a client, and then I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'll pick the kids up." And she was like, "Wait, what?" She's like, "You're not going to be." The impression was, bless her, was you're not going to be sat at your desk trying to generate clients, not 9 to 5 until you can afford to have the luxury of going to the gym. And that's a really pragmatist approach, and like there's no judgment there at all. Like she's perfectly right. Now, I also knew in my heart of hearts, me sitting anxiously, staring at a computer screen, trying to feel busy, was not going to do anything in terms of generating clients. And for me, going back to wanting to have the lifestyle I want, because being a coach is a lifestyle choice as well, you know, being self-employed is, it was about, hey, if I can get over myself and give myself permission to do the lifestyle stuff whilst not being busy, if I can't do that now, how the hell am I going to be able to do it when I'm busy? Like, and how the hell, like, if I don't do it now, I will always be taking clients and glossing over the things that are important to me for the sake of having a paycheck or feeling busy. So
Yeah.
that was a real important shift, and really hard. Sounds really hard, right? It sounds really stupid that it was really hard to give
No,
myself
you're
permission to
probably
go to the
makes
gym
perfect
when
sense.
I had loads of time on my hands.
Yeah, but then as you
But
said, there's always that monkey on your back going, Alex, what are you doing?
yeah,
What why?
absolutely. Yeah, that inner critic for
Yeah.
sure. Absolutely. You know, that ego going like, hey man, you gotta prove your worth before you can then
Yeah.
like do the indulgent stuff.
Yeah. You gotta
And
own
going
it.
back and then going back to it, like, you know, looking at my future, like looking at the present, like where I am now, I'd have never guessed that I'd be doing these three main roles that I'm doing now, you know, like having a personal a private coaching practice, working with Olympians, having like the most privileged conversations and being part of a high performance team, being co-founder of an AI startup. Like, what? Like,
Yeah.
no idea. I guess the beauty of it is like, because I don't have the specific vision, doesn't mean I'm floating around like going like hope things will happen. I'm still actively making things happen. It's just that because I've been open-minded and focused on, you know, is it a hell yeah? Then that's got me to where I am now. And do I know where I'm going in the future? Do I have a vision of that? No, but I know I'm just really enjoying the process.
Nice. Yeah. Something I've learned from having the conversations that I've had so far is, but maybe it's because I come from that fitness background, but it's always been very much entrenched in my belief system that you need a clear goal. You need to know
Mm.
where you're going and you get what you focus on. What I've had a realization on more recently, and by recently I mean in the past few weeks, is that you get what you focus on, but what do you miss out on the way? Because when you're focusing, it's very, very narrow.
Yeah,
So
man. It's about the
making sure
journey,
you're
not the
focused.
finish line. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
very much so. Yeah.
Hey, well, we talked. I mean, I think it's a really good point to bring up, man, because even in coaching, right? Goal setting, right? The
Yes.
grow model. It's got to be about a goal before
Oh,
we can even
yeah.
even start doing it. And it's like, actually, not knocking the grow model, by the way. It's a fantastic model. It's just not the way that I work. But you know, goal setting is great until it's not, right? Goal
Mm.
setting for me is really important, that if we're not going to have that hollow finish line, you know, like where we come crashing over it with the result and thinking, oh, I was hoping to feel a bit different. Then
Yes.
actually, generally, as a hard charging male, what happens is it's like, right, what's the next goal?
What now?
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, what
Yes.
now?
What now?
So something that I learned really early on in my coaching practice, I think I wrote an article about this. I called it the goal behind the goal. So,
Mm.
hey, maybe this will be a good example. Like, we're both from the fitness background, right? Back in the day, I'm talking from my experience. You may have been way more enlightened than me. Back in the day when back in the day when we took on a PT client, right? Big part of that was like, hey, we got to have some smart goals. We got to have
Yeah.
goals that we can measure to see whether or not this shit has worked.
Yeah.
and and we would be like, okay, cool. Well, as long as it's tangible and it's smart, like time bound and all that sort of stuff, great. And we've got black or white. Have we achieved it or not? Off we go. I never, I don't think, ever questioned those goals. I'd be like, that's what you want. That's what
Mm.
we're going to aim for. Now,
Yeah.
whereas now I'd be like, okay, cool. Hey, we can aim for 5% body fat, or we can aim to do like the drop in that dress size or whatever. And that's cool. And what are you hoping to feel when you get there?
Mm.
Right. And the reason why that is such an important question in coaching is it gives you a real insight as to what the feelings are that are missing from their life now. Okay, so okay, when you get over that finish line of like being that dress size, being happy with how you look in the mirror. What is it that's going to give you? Oh, like I feel more attractive to my other half. I have more confidence. I have more self-esteem. It's like, okay, cool, right. And then the coach in me is like, so how can we bring those feelings of, like, let's say, attractiveness to you now? Like, what's the first tiny little step towards it? Like, is it, go get your nails done? Or is it like have an open conversation with your other half about the fact that you're not feeling attractive, or whatever it may be, right? I'm obviously playing here in the moment, so I might not be doing a good job. But essentially, it's like, okay, cool. So how can we start getting those feelings now? And it doesn't mean that goal is insignificant, but it means actually we're working on the things that are missing from your life that you're hoping that's going to provide now, rather than that 6 months down the line finish line, and you are hoping to feel something different. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It's it ties into the Stoic philosophy of memento mori.
Hey,
Remember your mortal, or you are going to die.
right.
So don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today, because you might not have tomorrow.
I mean, I think it's one of the big things that I've learned for sure is contemplating death. And not so much in, I suppose, like, Stoicism, I've read a lot about and practice now and then, and it's memento mori is part of this. But it's like, one of my like the deathbed, like a deathbed visualization. It's a really important one. Like, have you ever heard of this?
Yeah. So you sit on your deathbed and you think back to all of the things you've done, and would you be happy with them, or what would you change? What would you have done differently?
So yeah, there's definitely that sort of like I suppose that sort of that end of life reflection for sure. But there's a visualization you can do about well, we could do it. Like, I could probably massacre it now if you feel vulnerable.
Let's do it.
Is there right? You don't have to share this for the audience, right? So you can keep it internalized. But is there something at the moment that you're grappling with, like, in terms of something? Yeah. Okay. So just take a second to ground yourself and, like, internalize exactly what that thing is, right? And now, whilst you're holding on to that, like, we'll just do a real quick visualization. Up to you. Keep your eyes open, keep your eyes closed, whatever works for you when you're visualizing something. So, okay, are you ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So imagine that you're walking down an empty hospital corridor, and as you're walking, you feel something building in you. You can hear your footsteps echo. You're starting to get a bit nervous, and on your left-hand side, you come to a door, and this is the door, and you open it, and you step inside and into a peaceful room, and you see an elderly person sitting up in that bed, and this is your future self. It's the version of yourself that is at the end of their life. They're full of all the wisdom, all the insights from your life that's been well lived. They look at you, they give you the warmest smile, the most compassionate gaze that you can imagine, and they know why you're here, and they are really eager to share their wisdom and their insights. You now tell them about your situation. What do they say?
Bloody hell.
Right. So right now,
you
don't need to share it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's for you. We can dive into that in just a sec. But the point of this visualization is that you usually get answers pretty flipping quickly. And they're usually along the lines of, do it. Don't have any regrets. Believe in yourself. Life is too short, right? In that bloody hell moment, like, did you get some instant feedback? You don't need to share it, but did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes quite quick, and it's around that same concept, right? Of, like, that contemplation of death, that time is finite. And I just think it's really powerful.
Yeah. No, absolutely is. I mean, I'm happy to share.
Sure.
So for me, it was human connection is a thing that I am grappling with. I I used to do a job where I was driving across the whole country, meeting different people, getting out there, and getting lots of different human connection from lots of different people.
Sure.
And I now work from home, and I now run a team of 12, 15 people. And I get human connection from them, but it's not the same because it's not that I ever feel like I'm superior to my team, because that's just not me. But they come to me for stuff. I'm there to serve them. They're not there to serve me. So for me, it's that reaching out for human connection, which was the whole motivation behind this
Sure.
podcasting.
Yeah.
And part of my purpose for this is to speak to people like you who have taken that courageous step. What did it take? And trying to share that with other people to say, if there is something that you are struggling with, if you want to do, do it, take that step.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing, like stepping up and being vulnerable there. It's and that word connection is, I mean, I think it's one of the big four, like, because if we look at things on a spectrum, or like on a dashboard gauge, right? And if we're moving towards connections, and connection can mean different things to different people, right? So for you, what I'm hearing, I suppose, cheesy term, is like-minded souls. Like, we can see a lot of people and have a lot of people in our life, but they might not be our tribe. Like, for example, I love being around surfers and skateboarders because we talk the same language, and like it feels like that community. I love being around coaches, again, because we're sort of wired the same way. You can be in a house full of people and feel lonely, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what the other end of that dial is, right? Is loneliness. It's the complete opposite to connection. I remember when we had our first kid, so we had Jack, and it didn't matter how many cuddles or nappies I changed or how many bottles I fed him, I still felt outside of that mum and baby connection. It's just life like that. But no one told me that part of being a new dad is that baby's just going to want mummy. And I knew that later on in life that I'm going to be in part of that network. But really, it felt like an outsider, and I was in a loving house with a lovely wife and a kid that I absolutely like adored, and a dog, and I was like, and I feel like the outsider. So again, like, I think it's one of those things that is really important as humans. Is like, we all want to move towards connection. And I sort of said part of the big four. Like, there's a coach, Trip Lanier, who he's got an awesome book. This book will make you dangerous. And he talks about these dashboard gauges. One of them being like lonely to connection. We're trying to move towards connection. He also says about like we should also be trying to move towards aliveness, or some things that light us up, things that are the hell yes, things that are fulfilling, whatever words you decide to use. Because the other end of that dashboard is bored. If we're not feeling alive, we're checked out, we're bored, we're scrolling, we're doom scrolling, or we're Netflixing, or whatever it may be, right? So that, again, if you're not clear on your values, a really good way to start is like, is this moving towards connecting to like-minded people? Is this towards making me feel alive? The other one is freedom. And again, freedom can mean different things for different people. It can mean financial freedom, time freedom. It can mean freedom to travel, whatever, right? Whatever your version of freedom is, because the other side of that is the big one. The other side is trapped. We feel trapped. I feel trapped by my job. I feel trapped by my relationship. I feel trapped by whatever, right? And when we feel trapped, we feel like we can't do anything about it, right? So how do I start moving towards freedom? And the last one is peace. And because the other end of that is stress. And that doesn't mean that there will never be any stress in our life, but it means, what do we need to feel peaceful in our life? So whether that is doing the work with a coach, whether that is getting clear on what our coping mechanisms are. In the concept of elite sport, we've got a stress bucket, right? And being resilient, keeping that stress bucket, is having that stress flow through us. So we need those taps to keep it running. And the more taps we have and that we can turn on at different times, the more that stress will come through. So that could be self-care, such as like having a coach, such as going to the gym, such as mindfulness, eating right, whatever it may be, right? So yeah, sorry, I've gone off on one again there, but yeah, they're really useful ones, starting points for people if they're unsure. It's like, does it make me alive? Does it make me feel free? Does it make me feel connected? Does it make me feel peaceful? And they're a really good starting place in terms of guiding principles.
I like that. But I think there's also something in, as you said, if you don't know where you're going, like you said before, when you were just kind of head above water, I don't know what I want. I think there is something in, and correct me if you disagree, please. If you don't know what you want, you probably know what you don't want.
Sure.
So if you're at that end of the dial,
Yeah.
what is at the other end? How can you move the dial from where you are now? Just a little bit. So
Yeah.
if all of your dials are at the wrong end, how do you move one of them a little bit and then the next one a little bit?
Yeah. It's like
sometimes it's much easier to say what you don't want than what you do want.
Yeah, and there's a lot in that. Like straight away, that moving that needle, like that 1% rule. That like what's something like if you did something 15 minutes a day, that over the course of a week, that's a lot. Over the course of a month, that's a heck of a lot. Over the course of a year, that is a heck of a lot. So it's like, what can I do in 15 minutes that moves the needle forwards on one of those dials? Okay, aliveness. Okay, I'm going to go pick up that guitar that I haven't played for like however many years. Or I'm going to go give myself permission to go out and walk around the marina without the dog, because that's for me, not for the dog, or whatever it may be. Well, there was something else you said there that I wanted to riff on, but it's totally slipped my mind. I'm sure it'll come back.
Yeah. So this is another big question, but what have you learned? What's been along the way, along this burn it all down 3 times now?
I guess to back myself, that has been a big one, and continues to be a big one. And I think the other thing that I've learned and or proved to myself or whatever it is that there is a different way. There's no judgment on people that want the corporate life and the 9 to 5 and all that sort of stuff, sort of like that, the rat race and that sort of thing. There is no judgment there. It's just that it's not right for me. And because that's the path that society kind of says that's how we tread, it makes us think that we couldn't possibly try something different. We couldn't go against the grain. And that brings me back to the thing that I forgot about, is this concept of like, you said like burn it down sort of 3 times or pivoted a lot or whatever. This concept of squiggly careers. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's a podcast actually, but there's this concept that, in our one generation removed, our parents' generation, broad brushstrokes, stayed in a job, got promoted through hard work and loyalty, whether they were probably right for the position or not, carried on, maybe had 1 or 2 different jobs and retired, right? That was what they knew and what society told them. Whereas in our generation, we're now seeing this concept of squiggly careers where people are like, hey, maybe I can pivot, maybe I can change. And to our parents' generation, I know I've struggled with it, is that sometimes they can look at our squiggly career and go, hey, you're kind of fickle, like you're not settling, all this sort of stuff. Whereas actually what I'm doing, I've realized, is going, hey, that's not quite right, but I love that bit. I'm going to take that. And then I'm going to, oh, that's not quite right. Until I've eventually ended up at this place where it's like, hey, I've sprinkled all the glitter that I want and I've made it what I want it to be.
Yeah.
They're also saying that by our kids' generation, like on average, they're going to have between 25 and 35 jobs, because that generation are not going to settle. They're going to be very clear on, hey, actually, do you know what? I don't have to stay here. I can do something else. So, which I think is enlightening, but it's a very big mindset change from what society teaches us at the moment. So that's something that I've learned. Yeah. So it's a long way of saying like, going against the grain, I guess.
Yeah.
And I suppose the golden thread of what I've learned is driven by values. Always leads to something good, for sure, in personal life and in career. And thinking about death.
So one of my questions is, Was there a point at which you feel like you've made it? But funnily enough, in your speech there, you actually said, "Now that I've made it, and I don't think, and that I've made it suggests an arrival at an end point." And from what I know about you anyway, and from where this conversation's taken us, I know that that's not true of you because there is no end point, right?
Yeah.
But you've made it, as in you've made the life for yourself that you envisioned.
Yeah, I think like if at the start of this conversation you said to me like, now that you've made it, I think it certainly would trigger something in me in terms of like, yeah, like for sure. And if those words did pass my lips, yeah, yeah, I've made it to where I am right now, as in the present,
Yeah.
and I'm really happy and I'm really excited and proud of where I am right now. And like you say, though, the truth is that none of it is permanent, right? My Olympic contract is a rolling one at the moment. It's not concrete, so that could disappear. The AI business could be a flash in the pan and land on its face, and that could disappear. And the cost of living could continue to spiral, and businesses and personal people might, tighten the purse strings in terms of not wanting to invest in coaching. All of it is, could potentially land on its face. However, how I feel about that is that I feel incredibly resilient. I feel incredibly adaptable. I've proven that I can still be present and enjoy and pivot, and yeah, and not that I'm unshakable. Still, I still have really, times when I'm crushed with self-doubt and stuff like that, which is part of the human condition. But yeah, I guess where I am is that I'm open-minded and curious and know that I've got a lot to offer. So when you're curious and open-minded, like the future looks pretty rosy. And I guess there's that thing as well as like, what was it worth all the hardship? Sat where you right are, like, because there was a lot of cost in terms of
Yes.
financial cost, whether that was dipping into savings, whether was that the actual cost of being qualified as a coach, whether that was the emotional cost of like, having those difficult conversations with Lucy or family members or whatever it may be that like when I was struggling. But absolutely, it is worth the cost in my eyes because even if it all falls apart, if we put me in that position of that deathbed scenario, that visualization I took you through, no regrets, man. Like I've tried and I can always get another job.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Fortunately, I've never had to yet.
Yeah. But equally, you've done it enough times now that path through the cornfield of start again is what
Are you saying I'm confident in burning my life down?
Yeah, but my God, what an amazing thing to have confidence in. Yeah. I think hopefully that's gonna chime with a lot of people who listen to this.
Yeah, I really hope people can take that away and also to realize that it is from the people that are listening, like if you are struggling with things, like take the gun of self-judgment away from your head. Like it is okay to feel what you feel. Like it's so easy to get into what I call a negative feedback loop. Like, hey, I'm feeling really angry, or I'm pissed off, or I'm feeling really depressed. And now I wish I could just get myself out of it. So now I'm angry about the fact that I'm angry, and round we go, right? That washing machine, that negative feedback.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's okay to feel that way. Part of being a human is all these emotions. And there is hope. There is hope, there is support, there is another way. The question is, are you willing to put in the work? Like, and that's not a flippant statement in saying like, hey, like I say, you can leave your wife and be a dolphin trainer in SeaWorld and whatever. Like, that's not what I mean. But it's like there is ways of getting out of that rut that you feel, whatever it may be. But there's no hack. You have to look in the mirror. You have to do the hard work. You have to be helped. At the very least, that's what coaching is. But at the most, it's like, hey, now we're going to put some actions to this, and you've got someone championing you, but also boldly challenging you to do this, right?
Yeah. Because as much as circumstances, situation, job roles have an impact, wherever you go, you're there. right? So
Right.
unless you're changing who you are, your thought process, your everything, nothing else is ever going to change, because
You are the common variable in your life.
yes, exactly that.
It makes me laugh, man. Like the coaching industry is a difficult one in terms of like how people market themselves, right? Like leadership coach or relationship coach or executive coach. That's a big one, man. Oh, executive, right? Got some sort of like, this person must be real serious. And I've had times where people are like, I really need an executive coach. I need to work on this thing about my career that's impacting me. And it's like, you come to the first session, which is usually a huge purge of everything that's going on in their life or whatever. And it's like, hey, like you haven't answered how, like how's things at home, like how's things with your wife, how's your relationship with kids, what's going on there? It's like, no, we're talking about work. I've hired you as an executive coach. How I show up as a leader. And it's like, yeah, and you are the consistent thing in that. You are the consistent thing in your life. So how you're showing up at home, what's impacting you at home, will certainly impact you in the boardroom. We do not we do not silo parts of your life. We talk and we look at everything holistically, because it all impacts you.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, but yeah, I think it's really important that people sometimes come to coaching thinking, I can silo off parts, or it's irrelevant that I'm going through a really hard time with my wife, or that my kid's not talking to me or whatever. And it's like, hell no, that stuff is gonna really impact how you show up.
Yeah, and there used to be, gosh, even from my early career, you leave your home stuff at home, and it
Yeah,
just doesn't
I
work
remember
like
being told that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, show up and be the best person you can be today. And today it might be here, tomorrow it might be here, next day it might be there.
Yeah. And
But
isn't
do
that
the best you
interesting?
can today.
Isn't that really interesting? Like, I know that we've both got history in sort of education and apprenticeships, and like you look at all of the latest versions of team leader or senior departmental manager or whatever it may be, right? Leadership apprenticeships. Big parts of that are coaching, right? It's like,
Yeah.
these are coaching skills. These are ones that you have to learn, and that side of things, which is very different to like, hey, you leave your personal life at home, right? It's now this holistic approach. I think for me now, the question which I find quite interesting is like, training leaders to be coaches is really important for sure, to be able to have these conversations. I think the bit that's tricky is having your subordinate also being, I suppose, the client. Are you ever really going to be able to provide that safe space where like you are in control of them being on the chopping block in terms of keeping their role? Will they ever feel completely comfortable, I suppose, showing all those cards, that exile thing, right? If I show all my cards to Ian, like, what's he gonna think? Like, is he gonna performance manage me? Like, now I know that you're a great dude and that you're an awesome coach, and no one would ever think that. But do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
It's an interesting
100%.
concept.
Yeah, can you hold both of those roles authentically at the same time? But then, oh God, I could talk to you forever about this, Alex.
I'll come back in series 2.
Yeah, please do. Please do. So I want to be respectful of time, because I know you've got clients coming up as well. And as I said, I could happily talk to you forever. But I think I've learned so much from this conversation. One of the things that I've learned is not that I didn't know it before, but the value of coaching. So hopefully other people have got that insight from this conversation as well. And if they want to reach out to you for some coaching, where can they find you?
They can either go directly to my website and fill out a contact form at clearwatercoach.com, or a lot of people find me on LinkedIn as well. So just put in Alex Bowman on LinkedIn, and I'll come up. So you can reach out to me there and message me there. But yeah, most people find me through either a contact form on my website, sometimes the life coach directory. But yeah, clearwatercoaching.com.
Amazing. And if you are interested in coaching, if you are interested in what Alex and I have said today, then but you don't necessarily feel like you're ready for the coaching just yet, you've got some amazing articles on LinkedIn that I always look forward to reading, and I've found some real pearls of wisdom, some enlightenment personally from some of those articles. So I think that's a really great place to start with it. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's really enjoyed that conversation. Really helped to scratch that connection itch for me.
Yeah, mate, for sure, for sure. It's been a while. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.